UN Chief Ban Ki-moon there, pledging to send a group of independent experts now to Syria to investigate an alleged chemical attack near the northern city of Aleppo. Both the government and the opposition have called for the probe now after trading accusations with each other about who was behind the assault, which killed, nevertheless, up to 31 people on Tuesday. Arty's Rina Galushka has been following these latest developments.
Reports indicate chemical weapons have been used in the Han al-Assal area of the Aleppo province. The details are not clear at the moment, but people were rushed to hospital after the attack. Few had visible wounds to their bodies, but some of them were clearly suffering from some breathing difficulties. Now, victims of the assault were saying that they saw other people falling to the floor, dying. Witnesses have confirmed to RT that people have been suffering from effects of what seems to be some sort of gas.
A doctor who is responsible in the hospital assured me that he himself tried to treat the people who were injured because of the chemical rocket that came over Khan al-Assal.
Now, who could be behind this attack? Well, both Assad's forces and rebels are pointing the finger of blame at each other. But the rockets reportedly fell in areas controlled by the government. Syrian rebels have long tried to overrun a weapons plant located in the very same area. You can see it on the map right there, Aleppo, and then al-Safir. That is the place where some of the country's chemical stockpile is said to be stored. In fact, the Syrian government said in December that rebel forces plundered supplies of chlorine gas. And some time ago, this video was posted online showing animals purportedly being killed with chemicals. Those behind this footage affiliated themselves with Assad's opponents and threatened to do the same with those who support the Syrian president. Yet all of this evidence doesn't seem to convince President Obama.
I am deeply skeptical of any claim that, in fact, it was the opposition that used chemical weapons.
An interesting use of the word skeptical, with the stakes being so high. One of the biggest concerns for all is the scenario where Syria's chemical arsenal falls into the hands of extremist fighters among opposition forces. As history has shown, there are examples when fighters supported by the West have eventually turned their arms against their backers. Now, let's for just a moment imagine that extremists among the rebel fighters could get hold of chemical weapons. How bad could the London attacks, for example, of 2005 have been if that was the case? We've already seen images of a chemical attack on a subway in a huge city in 1995 in Tokyo by a religious sect. Now imagine a similar scenario, but staged by people who were throughout the conflict in Syria initially supported by the West.
Horrendous prospect. Well, RT contributor Afshin Rattanzi is with me now. Afshin, hi there. We just had reports as well, a top loyalist cleric's been killed in a blast in Damascus Mosque. The opposition, meantime, has been invited to an Arab League meeting in Qatar to talk about its role in Syria's future. What does this latest attack say about rebel priorities, do you think?
Well, the mainstream media will have difficulty in reporting that one, Kevin, because this is a Sunni cleric who's pro-Bashar al-Assad. Yes, he's been killed in November Square in the Masra district of Damascus. Reports started coming in the past 10 to 20 minutes ago, so very sketchy reporting at the moment, but 20 dead is the figure that state Syrian TV are giving. So how is it that the Anglo-French, should we call them, backed rebels? Are they rebels? Insurgents? Are they terrorists? Those that want to overthrow President Assad? How is it that they're going around killing Sunni clerics in a mosque in Damascus? Perhaps they won't even be able to report about it at all because it's so against the mainstream media's idea of sectarianizing Syria between Shias and Sunnis.
Of course, Afshin, all eyes now on this new UN-sponsored investigation into chemical weapons as well. How thorough and objective do you think it's going to be?
President Obama seems to have prejudged what your reporter was saying and what other commentators are saying, because he seems to put the blame firmly on President Assad, whether it's being used by US, Anglo-French-backed insurgents, or whether it's being used by the Assad government. So there's already a prejudgment going on. UN inquiries have a very mixed bag of, in terms of their reputation. They've been good on Gaza sometimes. They've been appalling when it comes to nuclear negotiations at the IAEA, another UN agency, in Vienna. So when it comes to WMD, it's 10 years on since the Iraq War. We know how previous UN weapons inspectors' reports were sketchy, but then on the other hand, those same weapons inspectors years later said huge amounts of pressure were put on them and huge amounts of bugging, as we know from WikiLeaks, are put upon them. So UN reports always complicated to tell what their outcome is going to be.
Let me pick up on what you were saying just now. US President Barack Obama again said today the government, as he put it, use of chemical weapons would be a red line. What if it turns out if the chemical attack, if it did happen, was carried out by the rebels?
Then, of course, United States President Obama and Secretary of State Kerry will say that President Assad is not in control of the chemical weapons stores within Syria, and therefore, who knows, should there be an invasion. Either way, it's a lose-lose for President Assad when it comes to any WMD use.
How can Obama be so sure that it is only the Syrian government that's got the capacity to launch a chemical attack?
Many analysts in the Middle East will have seen his visit to Palestine today as a bit of an abomination, and that relates to how President Obama can be so sure it's an Assad attack. After all, he was talking about illegal settlements on the one hand and increasing $3.1 billion worth of aid, putting money on top of that for Zionist settlement expansion, even as he was condemning it. So perhaps that's why he's sure. Or maybe they talked to someone like Curveball, who told them all about WMD in Syria.
A lot of focus, too, on Ghassan Hitto, a US resident. A dozen, in fact, leading opposition members suspended their membership after he was elected interim prime minister. What does it tell us about the rebels and their motives?
It's well, some media are saying that's because he's a Muslim, because he did do amazing work post 9/11 in Texas before he suddenly decided he was Syrian, because, of course, he left Syria to avoid military service to swear allegiance to Ronald Reagan back in 1980. And, of course, secular anti-Assad Syrians, although it is a secular country at the moment, oppose his leadership. The fact that it's all breaking apart in Istanbul tonight means that, well, in the context of that bomb in that Sunni mosque in Damascus, the whole idea of a NATO-backed instability creation in Syria and the 3 million displaced, of course, in Syria, it's getting worse and worse. Let's hope people within the State Department in Washington realize that funding must stop for these insurgent groups.
Yeah, and just to remind our viewers, Afshin, before you go, just that top line that's come in the last couple of minutes that we were talking about first. Reports in tonight the top loyalist cleric has been killed in a blast in a Damascus mosque today. All right, thanks, Afshin. Good to see you again.